Hey, welcome back to the channel guys. Today we're talking about the NFC Skyreach 4 Mini, which is the successor to the popular S4 Mini. This is not a normal review guys, because I've owned this case for over 3 years, which means I can tell you exactly the pros and cons and what makes this machine great and not so great.
This is a Mini-ITX chassis that comes in at just 5 litres and can house a full desktop GPU.
Right, so here it is next to my daily machine, which is micro ATX sized. This machine does everything, all my gaming, all my editing, everything you see on the channel comes from this machine. And there is a reason why I switched from this to this, and I'll get into that a bit later.
It's a very good looking case, and being made from solid aluminium means it's very light, coming in at 1.1 kgs. It's also very strong and feels good in the hand, like a premium device should. It's got room for a standard Mini-ITX motherboard and a desktop graphics card. On top of that, it's got room for not one, but two 2.5-inch drives.
So guys, when it comes to small PCs, you've actually got another choice, and that is Intel's NUCs or an equivalent small form factor unit.
Intel's current flagship, codenamed Ghost Canyon, also comes in at 5 litres and also houses a desktop GPU.
So why would you go for something like this over an Intel NUC? Well, these are all desktop components, which means if anything goes wrong, you can just swap it out and you'll be fine.
In Intel's Ghost Canyon, you have to change the whole module, not to mention it's a laptop processor as opposed to the Skyreach 4 Mini's full desktop part.
So because of its thin design, you can actually slip it into a backpack quite easily, and that's exactly what I did for a whole year. And I didn't get any parts that came loose or any rattling or anything like that. This thing's actually as solid as a rock. So you're convinced, you want to buy this thing, that's great, but let's talk about some cons before you do that. First con is that you have to import this, so it takes about a month to come, and also you could be hit with import fees. For my American viewers out there, hey, how you doing? Also, you can ignore the last point on the import fees, because this is actually made in America, so you guys will be fine. Okay, so the second drawback is thermals, and you're limited to a cooler height of 47mm, and let me tell you something, there's not that many options out there. Realistically, you'll probably want to go with the Noctua L9i or L9A for the AMD users. There's also the Cryorig C7 Cu, which is decent. There's a new one out, which wasn't available when I built this damn thing, the Black Ridge cooler. From what I understand from benchmarks, it's supposed to be better than the other two. I didn't have access to that obviously because it wasn't made, so I actually had to go with the Thermolab LP53. It's fully copper, and I modified it with a Noctua 92mm slim fan. This was just enough to cool an 8700K undervolted, set to 4.1 GHz per core, so that's about 200 MHz less than stock. Even then it was hitting high 80s, sometimes hitting thermal max, so it wasn't ideal, but it was okay most of the time. Once I delidded it, it was fine, but obviously I don't recommend delidding to everyone because it does void the warranty. It's kind of an extreme measure. So because of that, the cooler height, you are limited to what CPUs you can use in the machine.
I also had to modify the CPU 12V connector to get the heatsink to fit. You can turn the heatsink the other way, but it won't be optimal airflow.
The graphics card length is limited to 210mm, which means that biggest card that can fit in one of these is a Zotac mini card, which unfortunately is more expensive than their full-size equivalents. That's another drawback about using this case. The final drawback is power, or more accurately, lack thereof. So cases like these are too small to fit ATX power supplies. You can't even fit an SFX power supply. So what you're gonna have to do is go extreme and use one of those DC to DC converters. I went with the HDPlex 400, as the name implies. It's a 400 watt unit, and I had to import this directly from HDPlex in Germany.
You need custom cables as well. I got mine from NFC Direct, but you can use whichever company you want. But look at this power brick, it's huge! This is a Dell 330 watt, and it's the highest you can find without going for a modified brick. This is a Dell 240 watt brick, which I highly recommend as it's much slimmer and lighter. So you should plan your build to fit in that power envelope.
So to sum up, it's an excellent case. It's very strong, very light, very premium feeling. It is expensive for what it is. CPUs are limited by cooling, and also the graphics cards are not only limited by the size but also by the power delivery. If you're looking to buy this case, you should really be aiming for a moderate build. So we're talking about an i5 with a maybe GTX 1060 or 2060, something mid-range. Those are the kind of builds that actually work really well with this case. So I tried to cram as many cores and as big of a GPU as I could find to fit in this thing, and ultimately I was disappointed. So if you're modding, you probably could cut a hole and have a bigger cooler to solve that problem. And there's actually a way you can link up 2 power bricks. I don't know why you'd want to, because one is big enough. But if you wanted to, you could link up 2 power bricks and that would double your power, and that would solve that issue as well. So there are ways around this. So what I'm giving is more general consumer advice. So if you want to pick up and go, then those are the problems that you will run into. So my trusty Skyreach 4 Mini has now been downgraded to an i3 with a GTX 1060. It's sitting happily in my living room, functioning as my media center. So that's it guys, that's my review of the Skyreach 4 Mini. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below. So I've got 3 years experience in this case. If you want to ask me if a combination of hardware works, or like some sort of cooling option or any sort of weird tinkering advice, I can give that to you. And also just leave a comment for whatever reason. If you liked the review, if you didn't like the review, agree, disagree, any reason at all, leave a comment down below, and I will see you next time.